I'm doing something a little different. I'm bringing a share to you from the total movement of our centers and churches all around the world. Our movement is called the Centers for Spiritual Living, and we have a worldwide movement, over 500 centers all around the world, and we have a leader, and I just went to the top. I decided I'm going to the top, and this guy is tops in my book. I want to invite the community spiritual leader, which is the chief leader of our movement, to the platform, Dr. Kenn Gordon. And I want to tell you about this beautiful man. Welcome. Dr. Kenn Gordon is not only the community spiritual leader for our movement, he is also the founder and minister, along with his wonderful wife, Dr. Deborah Gordon, of the Kelowna, British Columbia Center for Spiritual Living. They founded that ministry in 1993, am I right? And have led it ever since, and it's grown and thrived. And now he, for the last, 10 years, has been involved in leadership in our movement, and most particularly of late, he's created a kind of healing in our own movement that I want to talk to him about. But first, let's welcome Dr. Kenn Gordon from Twilight Church.
Thank you, Roger.
See you, brother. Well, it's a wonderful joy and an honor to have you with us, Brother Kenn.
The honor is all mine, truly. It's always such a pleasure to come here. I come here often and sit in the audience. On Sundays, we have an office up in Golden, so I'm here more often than you know I am.
Well, I'd put you to work if I knew. But thank you for that. And you know, I would invite you to describe to our wonderful congregation the healing, what occurred some over 50 years ago, and then the healing that you've been a part of orchestrating in your leadership.
Thank you. In 1954, we were one organization called the International Association of Religious Science Churches, and something happened, and it ended up splitting, like so often happens. 20 minutes of discomfort resulted in 56 years of us trying to bring it back together again. And believe me, it has been 56 years, because from the moment it split, the congregants and the ministers and a lot of the practitioners, they all leaned in the same direction, asking the question, why an organization that teaches oneness, that teaches beloved community, that teaches the connectivity that exists between all of us and understands the vortex that Dr. Rogers talking about, why we wouldn't get back together again. And so after 54 years, what occurred was that we did come back. Last February in New Orleans, we signed the final documentation. And the process to get there really took a fair amount of engineering and a fair amount of faith. And what occurred in essence was that some of us got the idea and we began to put it into action. And we started with the intention of seeing it happen. And then out of necessity, what we had to do was we had to release and surrender all of the different opinions that we had and connections that we had that we thought we were right about. We had to let go of the dogma and the doctrine, and instead simply allow Spirit in its perfection to bring us to that healing, to that wholeness, by bringing into our experience everything that was required in order to make it happen. And so for me, what I did basically was realized that I wasn't going to do this by myself, so I just surrendered to it. There is that power. I tell my students that I tried to put together an oak tree, but I couldn't get the molecules to fit. And yet there is that power in this universe that does it in perfection.
Thank
and
God.
When we surrender, so it is.
I love the points you mentioned, that healing begins with an intention. And you know, Jesus would often say to somebody before him, "Wilt thou be made whole?" You know, are you ready for your healing? You know, so it starts with the intention, and then you talk about the surrender of all the stuff we carry and the judgments and stuff, and then the opening of the heart, and then the moving into whatever it takes. Then it seems like the logistics and everything, though it can be painstaking, start coming together when those things are in place.
Oh, absolutely, and the end result is that vortex, the end result is that community, the end result is that connection and that connectivity, and most important, it's the love. When you let go of your stuff, what happens is the love shows up. And when the love shows up...
Did you hear that?
That's the joy.
All right.
Yeah.
You know, you come up with some goodies. I like that. You know, it's exciting that these movements, it used to be United Church of Religious Science, then Religious Science International, came together and are reinventing themselves as centers for spiritual living. And what a perfect time when the world needs these teachings so urgently. So here we are, reunified, getting more powerful and stronger because of that. And I congratulate you for holding the course. And you know, transformation sometimes is awkward and messy and not always easy. And you were dignified and high purpose all the way, my man.
Thank you so much. It's because it wasn't me. It was everything else that was conspiring to make it happen. Believe me, I wouldn't have volunteered for it. It just showed up and it was there. And for me, it was a spiritual practice. And the spiritual practice says is, if we practice oneness, then maybe perhaps we should start doing it ourselves as individuals and as organizations, especially when it comes to looking at the world around us, where we're pointing fingers at everybody saying, those people really need to get together. And the truth is that it starts within us getting together.
You know, and then most recently, you and I were a part of a delegation to a huge interfaith gathering in Italy. People of all faiths, many different social strata and expertise, and dealing with some of the challenges going on in the world and seeking to marshal our collective efforts in a wonderful way with all the different faiths and representatives there. That too lends it that's like in another level what you experienced with our own organization.
Yeah, and I think that where we went in Rome and we did that conference, it was a magnificent example of what opens up when you're willing to open up and become unified and one in the first place, and do that practice that takes you to that place. Dr. Roger and I had the opportunity to go to Rome, and we met with 250 spiritual leaders, corporate leaders, people who are head of NGOs, just generally a group of very, very powerful people. And in that process, we developed 8 or 10 tenets that we came forward with, and those 8 and 10 tenets really demonstrate, for me at least, that the whole world wants the same thing that we want. We want to be healthy. We want to live in freedom. We want to be free of violence and war. We want to have enough food to eat. We want to have enough water to drink. And it was wonderful to come together and see that that core was there. And all it required was that everybody who walked in the doors was willing to put down their opinion, their judgment, their belief system, their idea. And what we found out, which of course is true for all of us, is that we all have more in common than we have apart.
Yes.
And when we're willing to lay down everything else, the end result is that shows up, and that builds the passion, and that brings the love and the light, and it's possible.
And we articulated that the healing really needs to focus on the healing between religions, the healing between cultures, healing between genders, as well as healing with the earth and the very species of the earth. And yet it's that common desire and that unity, that heartfelt love that makes all of that possible if we can bring that to bear.
Without a doubt. And that's true here in your beloved community. It's so obvious and palpable here that you have developed, and you and your congregation have developed this wonderful community of love. I was coming in and people are asking me if I'm a member, and they're welcoming me, and it felt really, really good.
You are?
Yes.
Because you're here all the time out there in
Apparently,
disguise.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what excites me, Dr. Kenn, is that we are a relatively small movement, especially compared to the biggies that have been around forever. But there's a vitality in what we have. The impact of what we brought to that conference, I think, was transformative for many who were there. We learned a lot, but we also gave a lot. And that really tells me we have a lot to give, every one of us individually in our own sphere of influence and as a movement. And I'm just so grateful you're leading the charge, and we're here to support you. And thanks for being a part of this day, Kenn.
Thank you, Roger. And follow me, I'll be right behind you.
All right.
You've got to know with Dr. Roger that he's been doing this for way longer than I have. This is something that's been a passion of his that he's been leading from the very beginning. I'm not going to say 1954 because that would be insulting.
Please, no. Please,
but
no.
for a long, long time. I've heard about your stories in Anaheim and things like that.
Okay. All right. Only believe the good stuff. Dr. Kenn Gordon. Kenn, thank you, brother. Appreciate it so much.